Okay, so this is a fucking mess already. So it's already much more complicated than I anticipated, of course. First, due to being a flight case that was made for a keyboard. I have all the shit glued in here and they glued it really good. So I've got to get rid of that. And then, you've got all the plugs on the back. And yeah, those are fucking like 5 centimeters long, and to get them here and there, and that's gonna be quite a challenge. Okay, so I found out it's harder than I imagined, and I didn't even imagine it so simple. So this little key step had to go in order to get everything crammed into this box. So the Micro Freak will be the master keyboard, and here you can see with all the AC adapters and transformers and stuff, and the MIDI splitter, it's already tight packed, and no way I will fit this one in like I originally planned. But hey, you gotta be flexible, and yeah, it's portable and live, so you can't have everything you want. At least I found out all the power supplies fit in this one multiplier, so that's good so far. Now I've got the media almost cabled, and yeah, I'm kind of thinking it's a good idea before I start to get all the foam out of the box and make them perfectly fit so they won't rattle and are perfectly safe when transported. In order to make sure it all makes sense before I cut and waste the foam, just make sure that the cabling will even be possible, because if you see, like, it's already not much space, but it looks like there's a lot of space. But then if you put the cables in, and if you like me and didn't purchase a complete new set of cables, yeah, this takes a few centimeters, and you need them like everywhere to plug all the stuff. Yeah, so I think slowly but surely it's coming together, and if I get the cabling right, and I fit it all in there, I mean, you have to see that you want the mixer far up so it won't be covered by like this edge. So ideally you would like to have it this way, but then if you plug all the cables and they look on top, you can see it from that perspective. Maybe that's better, you see. And even the small cables, they're like higher than the levels, so if you got big cables that need to fix in the top mount. Okay, so I guess you have to make choices, right? So my idea was I want my DBX compressor, you see it below there, to sit on the sum out, the main out of this one, to get a little bit of compression. Yeah, but it's kind of hard to get it in. It's heavy, and I only have like those XLR cables, which are quite long, and I guess like 0.8 kilos or something. So if you have like 2 of those, it's like 1.5 kilos plus the DBX itself, it's easily 1.5 kilos. So yeah, you have to make hard choices, and I don't know, of course you have the power cable and stuff. So I decided, even though with a stationary setup I really was a fan of giving the sum a bit of compression, like between 2.5 and 3 decibels. But yeah, I guess you have to make hard choices and keep going, keep it simple, and in the end this will weigh at least 25 kilos with all those cables and all the stuff. So yeah, out he goes, DBX 266 XL. See you later. And just look at this mess. Instead of jamming, sitting on the floor and cabling and finding solutions, I'm a bit frustrated, but I'm sure the end result will make it worth it. And I can only highly suggest, before you start cutting your foam, to make sure nothing moves, can only highly suggest get all the cabling done and make sure that when you close it, there's enough space for those cables, that behind all the machines there's enough place, because there will be unpleasant surprises even if you buy like this big boy of a case. So recap, I just learned the DBX compressor has to go. It's too big, it's way too heavy. And the same is for the Arturia key step, which is kind of a bummer because it has like 3 octaves and the Micro Freak doesn't have as much, only 2. But yeah, it's still like, it has a sequencer that's poly, has a keyboard to play it, the mixer one. I will this beautiful tape saturation will be available through Send 1, and Volca FM will go directly through the delay T-Rex, and then I will still have the internal Clark reverb machine and effects machine for all the routings. And what's already very nice of this one is that for the 4 mono channels, it actually has a compressor for each channel. And of course the Digitakt has its own compressor on the main bus. So I will have basically everything with its own compressor. Here's like the foam, hope you can see it, like it's that one that's like pre-perforated, so you can easily cut it and fix it. And it's not exactly cheap, so I just bought enough, not too much. And now I'm really trying to think this over 2 and 3 times, just to make sure if I cut it, it will be perfect and I won't regret it. And I'm especially thinking about, because of the cables obviously have to go below the synths, and how I'm supposed to play that, and there needs to be like a nice layup, like a channel for the cables, so they can all reach where they need to reach. And at the same time, I think it's very important that on all sides of the synths and of course of the mixer, there needs to be some extra insulation, so it will be protected against knocks and pushes and rattling, and they won't like rattle against each other. So quite a delicate task, and since it's all cabled right now, I think I would just start here because here is the least amount of cables, and work my way up from here over to here, where it's also quite delicate because if you look here at the edge here, and then you can see that the connectors are quite high and they're reaching, this is like the end of the lower part, and they reach into the case. So if you close it, no, cables are blocking it. If you close it, no, it's too dark, but you can probably, you get the point, right? It's getting really close to the top part. Okay, now here's the scary part. I will have to cut, and if I make a mistake, I will have to buy like new shit, and will think I'm kind of an idiot, so wish me luck. Okay, that's already my first learning. If you cut, it's of course nice to try to cut in one of those lanes, so you don't have to go through the middle. And if you do, and cut with one, and with the other hand, you pull a bit, so you won't have the friction of the full part, but only of like these small compartments. Then you can cut like much better. So pull and slowly like saw up and down here. Okay, so here's the first cut. Cut here, so it will fit in. Yeah, so I put it in there, and I see now that there's just maybe 1 centimeter. I want this to be slightly higher, and also it's on top, and of course I want to cut a bit so it will be sunk in just a bit to be really bulletproof. And so I think I would take it out, put something like a small piece underneath it, so it comes up, this one onto here, and I can push this one, cut it out and push it a bit down. Okay, so it was good for the Tanzbär, but when I put the Crave, which is not as high as the Tanzbär, obviously, on top, when it was perfectly for this one, it wasn't perfect, so I decided to get it up to the surface so I can cut out, and it will be just perfect sitting in there. And I had, if you can see it here, there's now quite amount of place beneath, and I put some stuff under it. And yeah, now I'm experimenting with the height to make it perfect. And you may think there's a lot of wasted space, but actually you couldn't even carry it if everything was full with stuff. And then if it wasn't as high as it is, then like I said, you know, these cables wouldn't make it. So yeah, slowly getting there. Okay, so I've made some marks around the outlines, and I made sure to place all the 3 parts that will lie here with all the cables plugged, to make sure there will be no like nasty surprises. And yeah, let's cut and wish me luck. So am I doing this right? I don't know, it's not as precise as I would hope it to be, but then again, yeah, it's kind of satisfying as soon as you see how it looks with the fit. I mean, look at that, isn't that quite something? And it's not moving the slightest bit, so there won't be any kind of vibrations, nothing. Power thingy is missing. Then my awesome Strymon will be next. Okay, yeah, so it will be something like this. And yeah, I measured 5 or 6 times and made sure to put it in this way, because here's actually the AC plug, so there wouldn't have been enough power, enough place of course to put the power if you messed up anything. So measure 5 times before you cut. Okay, so a few hours later and a lot of cutting and cutting. And the first bunch already looks kind of good. Use the marker to make sure to cut on the right spot, but yeah, some parts are kind of messed up. It's a little bit messy, but okay, maybe I can get rid of that later. Maybe not, then I screwed up. But if you look at it before and after, I think it's already looking kind of cool, and I'm getting the impression it will be quite safe when, you know, lifting this gigantic heavy case. They should be safe in there, and that's like the main point, right? Alright, I will call it a day now. At least there's some progress. You see the base machine, the Crave. See this little detail and that the power supply and MIDI go down there and actually come from below, while the rest, due to the like unflexible Planetwaves plugs, they are cabled to the back. Nice. Only thing is this one, the only one I missed, and if you look from here, now here's the end. So this is quite critical, so I had to, first I had like the level of this aligned to the Tanzbär, but due to this one I had to get this a bit further down, so now it's, I see, not exactly on level, but still nice. I like it so far. And I can only say, take your time before you start to cut. Plug all the cables the way you plan to plug it, and really see if it all checks out and works out. If not, you will get into trouble, and take your time, because it takes a lot of time to do it right. But then it will be like really sturdy, and I mean, I think it doesn't look neat, right? Okay, so this one side already looks kind of good. Don't worry about this. Just say it's modern art. So now the other side, I've already removed the sensor and stuff, and the point is I've got all the AC stuff in this multi-box, and if something produces heat, then it's mostly these kind of thingies, and of course the mixer. And no, I don't need to worry about heat about one of those. But if you would fit them, this one just as closely, that would probably get into an issue. So what I will do is make sure that there's just a small kind of stuff under this, so that most of the area below it will actually be not covered, so that the air can float freely under it and at the side. And also I won't be filling this whole area below, but having like stuff like this, and put it, it's not perfect right now, but I guess you get the point. Have it like this, and then the main foam will get on top of that. So actually below there's a lot of air. I don't know if you can see it here. It's like a few centimeters, and the air around this like heat spot, it can like float freely, and the hot air can get up and vent off. So I won't have like the heat getting stuck in the area and heating up more and more. I think that's quite a big point. Yeah, so that's the first thing I worry about. This should be like have air all around above it, especially above it. It must be open for the air. There's always like the possibility of air to vent in every place. So when it's heated up and you jam like for hours, you will still be sure that the temperature will not be an issue. Okay, so this is what I ended up with, having like these compartments. See, so the air can float freely, and also of course I can take all the cables along those lines, put them through the other side so they won't be on top, and then I will like fill this up into a new one and then start the cutout for the machines, just like on this side. And so even if it will be fitted quite good here, there's the possibility of cabling and free air movement below. So let's get this going. So there's the cutout. Now I'm starting the work under the hood. And yeah, so since the Digitakt will be my sequencer, the output of the Digitakt will go into this 1-to-5 splitter and feed all the other machines with MIDI, with clock and notes and stuff. And since I will put the cover on top and then the machines, there will be it could get very confusing. Luckily I had like at least one colored cable, so the blue cable will be the input and all the other cables in the same color will be outputs. So if I put the hood on like this, it's perfect, you know, and I've got the cables coming out here, I can always be sure what are the in and the outs. One other thing is there's already a few cables, and as you might know, if you're into hardware, it's only like a fraction of the cables that I will need. I've here some cables, there are some cables everywhere. So in order to get some kind of order, I've bought these little strips and try to organize those cables in a way that they won't unroll and go on top of each other, and yeah, just to have some kind of order, and yeah, make sure they don't cross each other, because there will be of course the AC lines and some audio cables will go down and up and through, and there has to be some kind of system, else it would be really a mess. And if you would put the top on and put it down up, it will always get messy. So I hope these little thingies will help a lot. So now I've got all the power plugs already in. A few are already cabled, like the Tanzbär, the Crave, Strymon, and even the mixer. And what I've done now, since this case is big, but not big enough, because you got the mixer, and then you've got the cables behind them, that one, and even this big case will be filled up quickly. So, but when I'm carrying this case and transport it, there will be this case will get some hits probably here and there, and because it's big and hard to transport, and it will be shaky and there will be vibrations. And in order to save the mixer despite that and make sure that there will be no force applied on the plugs on the back of the mixer, I made sure first of all below it I've got a bit of the foamy stuff, so when it will get forced in that way, I don't know if you can see it, it has a few millimeters of like dampening below, so it won't ever hit hard, but yeah, it's kind of moving. Then on the front, I've squeezed in, it's really like 2 millimeters of soft foam in front of the harder one. And so on the back side of this is like really sturdy hard foam, and in front of that one I've got a bit softer, and this is like in the back, pushing the back of the case against the mixer, which is like, and at the same time there's more than enough place for all the hot air that will be produced by the mixer to ventilate. But still, if the case shakes and there will be like pressure applied like this, this is supposed to make sure that there will never be pressure directly on the cable sitting in the inputs or the power plug like pushing into the mixer and into the electronics inside. It's not perfect, but I guess for now quite good. And I've got this one big one here and there's one below. Maybe I will add a third one. It's not exactly super good looking, but it's functional, and as well I can easily like plug it out. For example, now I'm using the secondary outs, but if I got the cables, I will use the XLR main output, so I can just remove this, plug it, the new ones in, plug it back, and yeah, so it's supposed to be permanent, but at the same time there are always kind of different setups, so a bit flexibility is built in already. Alright, finally some progress. The Digitakt is in, most of the cabling is already cut out. Even the FM is fit in okay. Now the Microfreak is left and all the cabling. I will have to see if I like get the MIDI down here. If you remember, down there's the MIDI splitter, or through here, and make sure that here will be left air. I feel it's a bit too tight already in here, to get a bit more airflow down there so there won't be heat issues. But yeah, after all this mess I've created over a few days and been unable to jam the whole weekend, at least the setup is starting to look nice, and I feel it's gonna be a lot of fun to test it the first time. I can advise to cut slowly. First get the basic shape done, and if it fits quite good, then start looking for the jacks and getting them out. And before you start cutting the first one, make sure you first plug in all the cables, lay out the synths on top to see how big they really are, because I always wanted to make sure that I have at least a bit of foam between the outer foam, which is glued to the case, and a bit between the synths if possible, and to the side of course. And you will have to see where you can do it as good as you want. Like here I managed this one, then those channels met. It won't be perfect all the time, because you see the cables are quite big, and in the end I even had to throw out my T-Rex delay, which is really nice, but there's just no more space left, and all the cables and stuff, it would be insane. So go bit by bit before you start cutting out. Make sure you have the cables plugged and laid all the other sins to make sure that you won't start cutting and then you missed something and it won't fit. Okay, so another update. I'm pretty far already, so these are like the compartments that the other stuff on top is sitting on, and what they do is provide air, so it won't be completely covered, and the heat that those transformers produce can flow freely and get out, and it won't overheat. And I think that's one challenge of building a case, making sure that the stuff has the possibility to cool off, as it's kind of passive, you know, there's no fan in there. And at the same time, you know, if you want to have that, you gotta provide enough space for the air to flow from all sides. And another challenge is if you transport it, there will be shocks, there will be vibrations, and stuff may move around. So I actually glued this in, and on the floor below, oh nice, I just glued it. Not dried yet. Yeah, but that's actually the idea. There's some a thin layer of foam beneath it, glued on there, and the glue will be holding if it's dried out. Yeah, and so I now managed to get, this is for example for the Electron, those transformer units in their own compartment, which is open at this side, and this is for the Microfreak also. And by the way, I also took the cable and kind of fixed it so it won't be moving crazily around. Yeah, and so now I've got these big boys in here below the sins, and still made sure that by giving them a bit space and for cooling and a bit of foam beneath it, if they, you know, they can move a little to have air, but at the same time they're kind of safe and they don't fall and vibrate on this kind of hard casing. And I think for my first live case I built myself, it's should be quite okay. Yeah, I made one design tweak, one final with this detail to make sure this has the maximum amount of surface not covered but freely flowing air. I built some small thingies to the side, so if you look exactly, this always makes sure that there and there, like 50% of this side at least, not covered, because if you wouldn't have this kind of stuff, it could move and this whole side could be like blocked, and this is blocking the heat quite well. So on the side you have the air moving through the cable, behind there's a lot of space, in front is where it's going to move up because it's not going to be covered here. Yeah, so basically the idea was those little thingies glued in there, so the full side, and I put them on the small side, lay them this way, so now they can't move too much, a bit, but they can twist, and the longer sides will not be covered, so I guess that's quite good for heat management. And just as you see here, this is the same principle from the other side. So the AC plug is here, all the cable is below the surface, and then I like kind of punch a small hole with the finger and put the AC plug through. So when I'm gonna put it in, it's like coming out on top, and I can just plug it in and don't have to put it on top. Will look like this. You will gonna see. I think I like it. By the way, this is how it looks carved out. Alright, getting ahead. So the cabling is almost done. You see the MIDI cables, I've laid them out when they come on top, and they're way too long, so I also bundled them down and put them into their compartment. That's already quite good. Then I took some of the hard foam stuff to fixate like the AC adapter, the multi-plug, or how you call it. It should move, of course. Actually, when I bought this case, there was a lot of foam already inside because it's originally a keyboard case. And they had like a really sturdy foam, really sturdy. The one I bought is really softish, which is good. But I think it's very, very beneficial to have like the combination of, for like the more construction type stuff, this sturdy stuff, and the softer one for the top application that's like better against vibrations and stuff. Yeah, and what I also did is the MIDI splitter. I took some of the foam, put it on top, and with a strap. So when I will put the top on, it will lay on top, and if you can see it, it's just plain level with those others, so it's not exactly fixed. It can move a bit, but it's got some dampening below and on top, and so now I made sure that no matter how much this case will be shaken, nothing can move too much. There's a bit of possibility, even less when I put it on top, because it will get stabilized from there. And yeah, still the air can move to here and here. You know, this is where the cutout is. Can come up, and I think you should see it when I put it on. But yeah, a lot of cabling under the hood. Hell yeah, look at that. That was a long weekend. Just look what I've done. Complete mess. Yeah, so then wish me luck, because yeah, now I'm going to power this shit up for the first time, and I hope I didn't forget anything. Oh. Okay, power there. There's already some power going on. Let me see this one. Okay, power. Good. And that shit won't wake up. You stupid little shit. Okay, there's some... okay, some power is missing. God damn it. Oh, yes. So everything is cabled, everything got power, and it's all coming into the mix already. So far, so good. Looking awesome already. Don't you think? I like it very much. Still, there's stuff left to do. All the MIDI setup, so I can play the keys on the Microfreak, and the MIDI will come to the Elektron, and the Elektron will split it via the duplicator, the MIDI splitter, to the different instruments, without sending back on the wrong channel. So all the channel work and sync stuff still to do. The top of the case is not finished yet, because when I close it down, there's some air left, and of course I need some of the foam on there, so it will gently push down so they can come up while transportation and are also safe from the top side. And I'm still not 100% sure if I got this here right, or if it's maybe a bit too tall, so when I close the lid it may push down here, which should be avoided at all costs. Alright, so the final steps. The top side of the case, of course, is supposed to stop distance from moving in that direction, and so they hopefully won't move at all. So while I've got the, I don't know what is like 6 or 8 centimeters on the bottom, on top it's only like 2.5. I can see it. I was thinking a bit. I was looking at the different heights of the knobs, and basically, yeah. So you can clearly see the MIDI and mini jack output of the Grave are clearly way up too high. So I've laid it on there, made sure that there's a bit of extra space, so there's always a bit of place for movement. So if I now close it, this goes around here, and this the rest is still pressuring a bit, but not too much on the knobs. The level is okay so far. Right here on this side, I'm currently preparing gluing it in. Actually, I've had some issues with like this small kind of tube, emptied it, and it didn't wanna yeah, it was not nice. So I've got like a big bottle of spray adhesive, and yeah, so glued it in. I think it's because the nature of this kind of stuff, it's hard to glue, but yeah, it wasn't all that expensive. I think like 10 euros or something. Glued it in. So this one, I'm also looking what level is a bit higher than the rest, and of course it's those plugs in the back. But since this whole thing is not as broad as the case, I will just put it on top. So when I close it, flipped it, it should be something like this, right? And there will be enough room here, so they won't be touched. At the same time, this will still keep the Volca down. And yeah, I figured that Digitakt is a bit higher because the knobs are higher, and yeah, just to make sure there won't be any issues, I've got rid of this section here, and yeah, we'll glue that in a few. And yeah, for the mixer, that's another thing. You see, it's there's quite a distance between the top. It's not as high on the top, and to make sure the cables fit. So what I've made, I just glued a few of those foam thingies together, and these are the hard ones. They're really kind of tough. They were originally glued in here like big plates, and on the bottom there's one really fluffy one. And the basic idea is I've searched for some space, which I think here is quite nice, where there's nothing below that could get crushed, and at the same time I want to have like a good amount, a good surface area, so it can push down really good. It's the same one here, looks a bit messy, but hey. And if all faders are pulled down, I can put it here. Of course, I've tried it already and measured that if I take the case down, you know, if you look from here, it looks like this is far more up, but actually, since I've got a lot of room with the foamy stuff, the real fluffy one, you know, if it pushes down, it actually just like the bottom, the fluffy one is getting pushed, so it will be level, and still there will be a bit of force applied, but not too much. It will still be able to move a little bit, and in the end, if the fluffy stuff is completely maxed out, even the top one still has some potential to absorb shocks. Yeah, and so when this will be glued on there, of course, on the top end. And yeah, I think if this one pushes the mixer down and here, then the whole mixer hopefully should not move in this direction, because besides this one, of course, there's some friction on the sides, left and right, and on the back there's also something pushing it in this direction. So in the end, this should not move at all. So this was basically the main idea. Everything needs to have a few millimeters, so if vibrations come, it's not fastened too much, so it won't get hurt or damaged, so to say, because there's still a bit room to like absorb the energy and the shocks. And yeah, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of critic knowing everything better, and yeah, let me know. I don't know. It's the first case I built. I'm very happy. Now the last few technical stuff with the glue and shit, and after that one I will finally get to the MIDI setup. It's actually quite new, but yeah. First of all, I will have to spray glue on this one and on this, on basically on both surfaces. Then it takes 10 minutes for the glue to dry up, and if it's dried, I can push it on and it will be perfect just like this. Yeah, so I'll update you later. If I now close it, I hope there's enough light. Maybe I'll turn up on the light. Great, so if I close it, oh, there's a cable. You can see how it pushes down there, and here, I mean, it's hard to see, you know. Yeah, it's a good match, and I think it's enough surface area to deploy enough pressure to keep this thing actually down, because it weighs, I think, like 3 kilograms. And yeah, so I don't know if I mentioned it, here's like sturdy, harder foam, and on top a bit of the softer one. So this is getting compressed and pushing it down without being too stiff, so in case there's some kind of vibration, this can take it, and at the same time it's sturdy enough to make sure this won't move. Yeah, so I don't know, I must say I like it a lot. And yeah, today's the day. Let's turn this off. Today's the day I'm gonna do all the MIDI routing stuff, because I'm now using this guy as master keyboard. MIDI from here going through the Elektron, which is my sequencer, from the Elektron going out to the splitter below, and the splitter goes back to play my MIDIs. Actually, this one is only synced. The Tanzbär, I like to use it live. And the sequencer is awesome for using it without that one, so very flexible. And yeah, what's new about the setup? The mixer. The old one was really old. Really a lot of bad crunchy sounds and crackle. And the most bad, which was worst, was of the two aux which it already had, one was completely decimated. So really looking ahead now on the aux send 1, I've patched Strymon, the tape saturation simulation, and this kind of double tracker slash, it's a bit of a tape delay. And so I can add it on all the synths no matter where I want. And also the first one is auto-routed now to this effect section, which is actually done by Clark Technic, which Behringer bought luckily, and I really love the sound of that one. So way better than the old crummy stuff I used to use. So I'm very excited to see how this turns out. And yeah, the first jam will be coming, and this tutorial will get cut in a few, and yeah, I hope it was kind of interesting.